Sorry.
So today we are hosting Irene Inchaurrandieta for the 8th roundtable discussion. She's a recent graduate from Nuova Accademia di Belle Arti, Milano, Bachelor of Arts in Painting and Visual Arts. And today we will discuss her thesis and final project titled Wishing Well, an Artistic Approach to Rainwater Collection, mostly in the context of Mexico City. And we have to say that we are highly impressed by her sensible artistic approach and her vision of urbanism and architecture, despite the fact that she didn't study architecture. I can also briefly introduce her work so she can continue with her discourse along with the presentation. She studied art projects as case studies on the environmental subjects and eco-activism by digging into certain notions such as econventions, art complementing science, and magical realism. She's from Mexico City, so she will give some insights into how water shortage, or it's better to say mismanagement of water in Mexico City affects working class and financially disadvantaged groups of people and neighborhoods in the urban and cultural context. And also maybe we can have a chance to ask her more questions since the presentation going on or after the presentation. So Irene.
Should I start with the presentation first?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll share the screen. Maybe.
Amal, do you need to give permission or?
No, I can share. Yeah,
Okay.
I was just trying to open it like in a way that was nicer, but I guess not. Okay, share screen.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
We can.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, nothing changed. All right, so yeah, you said the project title, which is Wishing Well, an Artistic Approach to Rainwater Collection. The context was, of course, me being from Mexico City. I've always had this interest in water scarcity because the city, although it has such heavy rainfall that it even like surpasses London, for example, in annual rainfall, but because of lack of infrastructure and like mismanagement and also seasonal rainfall, there are moments in which the population suffers from water scarcity. Of course, coming from a very privileged household, I would only maybe be inconvenienced by not having water for 2-3 days a year, while this is the reality for a lot of people in Mexico City and a lot of neighborhoods that suffer from water scarcity for months a year when rain doesn't fall anymore, or when their areas are flooded and water becomes contaminated. I decided to focus on rainwater collection because it's a very physical solution. It provides water directly. There's also this sense of like a recovery of appreciation because there's more permanence of water. There's this like whole process in which it's filtered in your own home, and this sort of brings that like appreciation for the process it goes through before reaching our taps. And I used art as the way to bring this to life because it's what I can provide as an artist. I am not a scientist or an engineer. I cannot really focus on those areas, but my little grain of sand is through art. And of course, restoration can be beautiful and poetic too. I don't think it should be only a cold, pragmatic thing. I focused my research primarily, like the foundation, were ecoventions, which are, as Esra said, these projects that aim to physically transform a local ecology. So in these artistic works, nature plays an active role, usually in healing itself. These projects are not very invasive. They usually blend with the either urban or rural landscape through, like, you know, it might be a water treatment plant, or it could be a forest, a restorative forest. So it's always blending into nature and into its environment. I looked at how it is, these projects are usually considered less art because they contain so much science, but in reality, I'm seeing them as complementing each other. They provide different perspectives. Art provides this like invisible effect, which is the sort of healing of the psyche, which is crucial for these projects to have a real impact. It cannot only be physical, but also our actions and the way we relate to the environment has to change as well. Community collaboration is crucial in these projects because they provide longevity, maintenance, and as well as, like, no one will know what the community needs more than the community that resides within. The people who are directly benefiting from it are the ones who will know what they need and how it's the best way to achieve it. So it is necessary to seek this participation. I'm going a bit fast. I'm not explaining the works, just so. Then, of course, I looked at artists who focus on doing ecoventions about water. A quote that I loved was, "We all live downstream," because we sort of, with water, connects us all. And what happens upstream affects those downstream. And of course, there's many different ways to focus on it, like quality, treatment, conservation, all of these bullet points I listed. There's different approaches and different interests, and in the end, it was crucial for me to understand how people were approaching water, also for the symbolic aspects of it, not only how they were physically transforming it, but also what like sort of spiritual or symbolic effect they had. I wanted to focus on magical realism for its importance in Latin American culture. It is a literary genre, but like, it's based on, like, blurring the lines between magic and reality, making extraordinary things seem very natural and like day-to-day regular occurrences. So it's very relevant in a context of, like, so much history of, like, pre-Hispanic sort of myths, legends, and these, like, divine beliefs clashing with, like, European influence of, like, progress and, like, technology advance. So it's this sort of mix which fit perfectly in Latin America, and I sort of took that influence and saw it in a non-literary way, because I focused specifically on, like, urban legends, which are, for example, the beliefs that elves exist. That is relevant in my project, because in day-to-day lives, it is common to see elves as creatures that live in your home. They sort of interfere with your life in very, like, minor inconveniences, but It's sort of common to see it as a fact, and they're creatures of nature, always related to rain, animals, and so I saw this relevance of this belief was, to me, magical realism coming to life outside of books. Then I talked to an expert in Rainwater Collection who works for Isla Urbana. Isla Urbana is a group that installs rainwater collection systems in homes or public buildings such as schools. Their goals are mainly to decentralize water, so to release people from the necessity of relying on the government to provide this important resource to them. So usually marginalized communities will be the ones who will be most at risk and more ignored by the system. So it is this sort of path to not rely on them anymore. They want to close the gap of the dry season. So like I said, like rain is very seasonal. It's set in only a couple months. And so the rest of the year, there needs to be sort of this reserve of water in order to have a physical supply. And they also focus on environmental education. So this awareness, raising awareness, and this will to take care of it. David Montañana was the expert I talked to. He focuses on social environmental education, and he explained to me also the differences of the zones in Mexico City. Mexico City is really big. It was originally built on a lake, which is like this huge historical relevance, this connection to water. The Aztecs built their sort of empire on the lake of Texcoco. They called it Tenochtitlan. And the Spanish then dried out the lake and built over it. So there's this very real connection to water, and also you see the downsides of it, which is the complications that come with drying out a lake and building on top of it, which is the city is sinking, the aquifer underneath is our only source of water, and it's running out because it's not renewable. All of these things matter a lot and are very important, and physical and social obstacles that are relevant for trying to solve this problem. The different zones are high and low zones. High zones are usually harder to get to, and so they're physically cut out of the system. They are marginalized communities living in very poor conditions, or even some indigenous peoples that still live in traditional the traditional practices that have sort of avoided the urbanization of Mexico City, but are in turn sort of pushed away. Low zones are more affected by water quality because usually due to the poor infrastructure and no maintenance, they are the ones that flood when the rain season comes. So they are sort of impacted during rain season. I decided to focus on a high zone, which is Xochimilco. Xochimilco has also a low basin, which is also very important because it is one of the few areas that are left that still has that system of islands and canals that the Aztecs had. So it is now a touristic area, or part of it is a natural reserve, but they have that ancestral connection to water. But the high areas of this which have avoided this urbanization, there's actually a natural reserve, have indigenous peoples living within, who are cut out of the system. So I chose to hypothesize this project in this area specifically. Sorry, I'm taking too long.
Don't worry about it.
For the
It's
project,
very interesting.
thank you so much. The project, I wanted to start with collages because I sort of wanted to focus on the idea of magical realism to begin with, sort of this thought that we don't know what technology is going to look like, or like, so the best we can do is reimagine our current world in a sort of magical sense, where things do other things, they work differently. And so I thought that with collage there could be this sort of unifying and like repurposing of, for example, like the castles and water slides, where like they take a step from recreation to functionality in this sense. You know, like we have different machines mixed with nature. We don't, you know, in this idea, we're just, I was just wondering possible.
These machines are currently in use in that neighborhood?
No, this one, no, these are just like, this is actually an art piece. Like I was just imagining sort of like the first part of this project, I wanted to be like, oh, the future of Rainwater Collection, which might be in another dimension, another world. Like, you know, a flying castle might never be possible, but still having that sense of magic and bringing that sort of like illusion to what could be, or
I'm trying to understand the existing conditions. There's no any technology involved for the low-income neighborhoods having any machine.
Yeah, there is the actual like the actual rainwater collection system I look at in the second part, which is here, the zine.
Okay.
Like I wanted to look at like how it physically works, an existing like rainwater collection system. So I wrote step by step how rain falls into the system and how it's purified and all the process it goes through until it reaches a tap. This is like a diagram on the same zine where is the actual rainwater collection system which Isla Urbana uses. And here what I did to find sort of like the poetic and like symbolic aspects to it was I reading what the step or what was the process going on at that step. I would write down the first words that came to my mind, sort of like the emotional response to the sort of scientific, physical things that were happening. So it's on one side you have, I wish I could show you better pictures. Can you see the folder I'm opening? Or no?
1 second.
Not yet.
It's still not appearing, but it might take just a second.
Let me see. Yeah, I need to change it. Okay. So
Yeah,
do you
now
see
we
me?
see it.
Do you see me
Yeah.
changing the photos?
Yeah.
We do.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so yeah, it's because I didn't have that picture in the presentation. So on one side you have this, which is the booklet, like all with all the pages, if you fold it, and then on the other side you see the diagram.
Okay.
That I think it wasn't too clear in the presentation. Now I'll change again to the presentation. Okay. And so here it's how I found that sort of meaning to each step.
Mm-hmm.
And the sort of third part of the project, I wanted to create a model which sort of blended these ideas together, the ones I thought of when doing the collages, and then the poetic, symbolic parts that I thought of when doing the zine.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a model that sort of shows like a working one in red clay. I did all the parts that are part of the already existing system that I cannot change as an artist. I leave that to the scientists. This is how it works. And with white clay, I added sort of the fun and symbolic parts of it, because I felt like it needed that joyfulness and that extra meaning to it, rather than just leaving it at, oh, you're gonna get water, period. It had to be something more fun and meaningful. Here are all the sides. I'll explain more about it. So it's a small 3D model. I then created like small pieces, which to me had like magical symbolism. So like a ceremonial bowl with like some stone seeds, where that would be next to this area where like here the first rainfall that falls on the roof is literally wasted, because the first drops are sort of cleaning the roof, and they're the dirtiest water. They are just discarded. But I thought they were actually the most symbolic droplets of water, since they were the ones breaking sort of this state of dryness into rain, if that makes any sense. So to me, they needed some appreciation with like the symbolism of like seeds and fertility and like origin, like new beginnings. The blue braid, I did it in relation to the elf stories, because usually a big giveaway that there's an elf living in your house or nearby is that they love to braid animal hair. So like some legends say that like, oh, if you go and you're like, there's horses with braids in their hair, it was like elves who did it, and you know that they're sort of protecting your house, but also you should sort of like acknowledge them and give something back. So I thought it was sort of fun and exciting to imagine that they have a role in providing a household with this resource. Through the window, you can see another braid. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
No problem.
That was very interesting. You know,
No, the
like,
model is lovely, lovely.
yeah,
No, thank you so much.
you're using a lot of like, diverse methods to reflect your art, which is quite interesting for us, especially as architects. Like the use of model is very architectonic. Can you tell us a bit about like your inspiration and what made you use these mediums? Maybe like the collages versus like design or the model. Why did you choose those specifically?
I felt that it was very necessary for me to use collage in the first step, because it was sort of images given to me, if that makes sense. Like I just strip them out, and then, but the images are already there. I don't have to sort of imagine what the structure might look like or what the environment would look like. It's already there, and it is my job to sort of recontextualize them, and that's what I was doing without changing like the physical object. So I wanted to imagine another world where like the perfect conditions, the perfect rainwater collection system, but since we don't have that technology or that magic in this time,
Dimension.
this dimension, yeah. I thought it was necessary to sort of like repurpose already existing like imagery. And then the zine, I thought it was interesting because I've seen like sort of emerging will to share information through this like medium. Like here in Milan, there was for example, Sprint. It was like a print fair or book fair. I don't remember how they titled it, but everyone was selling zines. It's sort of like this young desire to like tell what we have to say, while also like expressing ourselves through like our creativity and our art and design. So I thought it was like the right way to give like the informative aspect of the rainwater collection system, to give it sort of this edge and sort of this, I don't know, I see it as an emerging it's a very strong medium for me right now. I've seen it everywhere, and like young people want to use it to talk, simply to be heard. And the model, I think it was like necessary to have like a three-dimensional like sculpture to be able to appreciate sort of the proportions, and also to see it in a very like physical way, like how everything is connected. Seeing it from different angles. I thought it was like the best way to do it would be in a like three-dimensional object. Yeah.
And to confirm, like the white structure is usually like a house or a building, and the system is attached to the back end of it.
Exactly. It is based on like its effectiveness, let's say, is based on like the size of the roof, because that is where like that is what collects the rainwater at first. So then it needs to be adapted to the house. It is every time it's like individual. Isla Urbana like goes and does like they study the building before, and then they sort of adapt their systems to it. And in this like proposal, I'm imagining a household in this zone that I described in Xochimilco, for its like for the necessity that they have, but also for the like magical and historical connection to water.
Yeah.
Maybe I have a question. I want to go back a little to the case studies you mentioned previously. I mean, of course, maybe it would be a bit political question, that based on your perspective and analysis, that approach that some artists are providing, like cleaning after the pollution kind of projects. Seems like in between community service and actually cultural productions. Like, do you think is there real impact on changing the society, or they are doing this favor for the mass production corporations? Also, like Agnes Dines, like her projects mostly founded by UN and the Ministry of I forgot where she's from.
She's from Hungary.
Cultural and Environmental Ministry, but that's both UN and they are involving that part of the problems mostly, and she has no problems getting funded by, like, it's kind of advertisement feeling projects. How do you approach this?
In my opinion, it's like there needs to be this balance between yes, healing the area, because sort of like, oh, if I don't, who will? This having this attitude, but also like making sure, I think it's like very important to outline who is the culprit of like that situation. Like, I think it's very important, like you say, to not hide or do a favor or publicize the people who are harming it. So important. I think part of the piece should always be information to whoever is visiting, to whoever is benefiting from it, and whoever like comes across it. Like, they should know why it's happening and like why it was necessary to take action. And I think like it's difficult. It's a difficult question to think, like, should it be funded by these people or not? Like, in a way, I wouldn't know what to say, because part of me thinks like, yeah, like take their money and like use it the way like you feel would be best. But also it's complicated, because it's like, oh, you're working for them. So it's complicated.
No, it's
But
definitely a big question.
yeah.
And we are also discussing a lot, like approaching fundings, like is it a substitution of activism, or like where is the class struggle locates in that environmental activism.
But at the end of the day, it's like these projects require so much money that the only people and institutions capable of doing it are, of course, the ones who are harming the environment. But then in that case, if they don't fund it, you know, who will? So it's kind of like who will have the money to invest on 11,000 trees, you know, that the project of Agnes. So it's, who knows? It's difficult.
You know, it's very like in the beginning when you were talking a little bit about like how Mexico City, although it has all this amount of rainwater that comes through a year, even though at the annual rainfall, even though it's seasonal, but still there's a lot of water. And then you talked about the changes that happened with the history, and it made sense that, oh, this is a city that was built on a lake because, you know, the people before knew and understood the location, but then it was, you know, disrupted and changed by, you know, the Spanish, and how it became this place that has all these problems and now it doesn't have water. But they've been like these problems, as you've been saying, have been happening for a lot of time. So I'd like to ask, like, why do you think, you know, there hasn't been any like structural changes to resolve this issue that is harming a lot of people? And you think like these kind of like small interventions, I don't know how big it is, I'm sorry, like this one done by Isola Ban, like, do you think it's a viable solution, or how can there be kind of like an interaction where there can be something that involves, you know, more? If you can talk a little bit more just about that.
Well, I think it's been going on for so long without any change, mainly because the people who are most affected by it are the people who the system doesn't care about.
Yeah.
And of course, it's also a city that has grown so rapidly. Like it's one of the biggest cities in the world in such a like limited area. It's also in a lake,
Valley.
in a valley, exactly. So it's like the main source of water is the aquifer, which is like limited, but you know, those who are privileged will always have access until it runs out. And then extra water has to be pumped by pipes over the mountains into Mexico City, which is of course super expensive and unrealistic, unsustainable. Like, all these complications are still gonna prioritize like benefiting richer neighborhoods and richer people. So in the end, it's like, oh, they're left alone. And this idea of Isla Urbana, like, of course, like you say, it's household by household. So it is not like, oh, it is a change that can suddenly fix a whole neighborhood. But they did studies on like what is the potential of these systems, and it is huge, because it's sort of like changing a pixel. Like he explained to me that, like, that Delfin Montañana, the expert, he explained that when you do the study and you see the areas that are sort of green and orange and red of who suffers most from water scarcity, those who are in red can be green if they have the system. So it's sort of like changing this pixel per pixel, you know, making people like free from like the water system, which literally does not reach them. So it makes you independent. Usually these people have to buy pipes, which is so like ironic, because it's like the most impoverished communities are the ones that have to pay the most to have access to water, because they have to buy like the trucks to go and deliver it directly. So it is the system that benefits from having them at their disposal, while also like not being affected by the physical problem itself.
Yeah.
So I think that's why there's been no real change, or like.
So it's more of a, it's a systemic issue that benefits one part of the society
it's
and not the
super
other.
comfortable, like for everyone else.
Exactly. And so if
Is there
gonna
any public service intentions, like working with the municipality, like buying that pipes for the
there's always like
in bulk?
Yeah, there's always like, oh, okay, like during dry season, the pipes will be cheapest in the poorest communities, like those who have to buy them. But it's always like this controversy of like, oh, shouldn't it be free? Or I mean, well, water is not free for anyone in Mexico City. Like you still have to pay like as a bill, you have to pay for water. But of course, if you have to have it delivered
in the first place,
it's more expensive. Yeah, and it is sort of this contradiction. Like, oh, is it valued truly if you just sell it for cheap? And like, you know, it's sort of this complicated issue, because it is a very superficial solution to say like, oh, you're gonna get it cheaper, rather than, oh, you need to learn how to take care of it. You need to learn why you have to buy it. You need to learn like that the system is against you. Like there's so many things that are behind it, and I think that just being like, you're gonna get a discount like these months, I think it's not enough.
Yeah. And it doesn't solve a core part of the issue.
Yeah, and you're still dependent on that, on that whole system.
And so with using this like rain system collection water, this rainwater collection system, sorry, I'm fasting today, so
it stops making sense after a while.
So this makes the users, like the end users, kind of like even though they're already cut off of the system, but this makes them less dependent on it, and so they just depend on that system, and so the water. And these like, does it cover it for them like annually, or only during like the certain months?
They are. It depends on like the like personal use of how you conserve it and stuff. But of course, it will like. They usually are able to provide a household with water for up to 8 months a year, which is like a huge difference. You are the owner of your own water. Like it is delivered to you, and you can manage it, and like it is up to you to take care of it. And then they're searching, of course, for ways to sort of make that gap close between like 8 to 12 months, and that's their like another goal that they're working on, to find ways to completely like make them independent.
Okay. I had another question related to just more on elaborating a bit on like econventions, because it's a very intriguing concept. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it intersects with your work?
Yeah, of course. Um, I stumbled across them because I was like at the beginning of my research, I wanted to find like environmental artists, but I was sort of struggling to filter out like those who were making like works with a message, and those who were like having a physical intervention on in like in a community. So I wanted to sort of find these other artists, and I found these curators, Amy Lipton and Sue Spade, who did a whole exhibition on this. They called them Ecoventions, and it's sort of like artistic projects that are usually, actually, speaking of, founded by government or like these big institutions, because they are usually require a lot of permits and a lot of collaboration from scientists, universities, like researchers. And I found them still very interesting because it's this I saw it as a resistance to not only like those who were like harming the environment and like a physical resistance, but also to within the art world. I saw it very interesting to like to see that they are not very marketable. They're sort of defying that in a way as well. It's not easy to exhibit them, of course. Like usually you can't bring a whole ecovention inside a gallery. Like you have to bring like, pictures or documentation or a video. Like it's usually harder to exhibit, harder to sell, harder to invest on. Like it's less attractive to the art market. But that was also interesting to me, to think that it was also resisting that commercial just view of art that maybe would contradict the message that they were also sending. And so I thought it was interesting, and also I loved that like they saw science as a medium as well, not as another subject or anything. How it was completely capable of blending into art and just being part of a piece, not separating a scientific project from an artistic project.
I think it's very interesting because we also like anything that has different intersections. We're always trying to combine stuff like art, architecture, urbanism, museology, whatever. So whenever there's these kind of combinations, it's interesting because like those clear cut separations are sometimes not always realistic. And so like you showed in this kind of example, it's very interesting to have like science and art that is combined with each other. And so it's a very interesting and intriguing concept.
Especially, I think, last 20 years in the art world, like, I find it very brave that you mentioned magical realism, because, like, spirituality almost is forbidden to use. Like, art is much more political and rational side.
Yeah.
And you are interested in both, like, how science can be a medium, but how it can convert to magical realism in the urban aspect. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think not drawing any borders, sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, no, wait, I forgot what I was going to say. It's because I had something to say. No, I forgot. It will come back to me.
Yeah, when it comes back.
I think you are the only person from your generation that we interviewed. Right, Amal? I think she's the youngest ever, so I have a question
but
related
Bibi technically is Generation Z,
true.
but she's in the cusp. She's like 1997, 98. No, she's 98. So end of
98.
beginning of 98, so January even. So
That's me. Like I'm
Yeah.
2000. Like it's the same.
okay. And so
But
Yeah, I see so much awareness on
but I was also
ecology,
no, but
and
I saw that also with the references of a little bit of Miyazaki, and I can see like you can.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, that was mostly like for like the aesthetic of it,
hmm
and but also like the like his inspiration and his like spiritual connection to environmentalism was very like detached from political like discourse.
yeah,
He was very like I don't know, he sees it more as like more than an institution. It's like, oh no, it's this connection to nature that like
yeah,
surpasses any, I don't know, political side, like they always want him to speak about environmentalism in a political way. But I love that he was like, no, I'm not going to to side with anyone.
no, but it also still
Oh, that's
shows
what I
in the
wanted to
work.
say.
Oh,
I
okay,
remember now what I was going to say. That another thing about ecoventions that was also very interesting to me was, yeah, the collaboration with science and these like things coming together, but also the active role of nature. Like I
yeah,
think that was like sort of a small. I felt it like, oh, the artist is sort of just pressing the switch, or like pushing the domino, and then like nature itself is the one who heals
and
and
takes
like
over.
takes sort of that initiative, and
hmm
and it can mutate the project itself, like to give it like a different outlook and everything. Like I thought that was very powerful.
Yeah, no, that is very interesting. No, and like you were saying, it's for me, it's also interesting taking from like you were saying about Miyazaki, not from a political, but even though his politics, like his interests are very like very
Yeah, yeah,
apparent
yeah.
in his work, like very anti-war, very
Hmm.
interested in nature and how people deal with nature and how like giving different points of views. And so for me, it was a very interesting like
Yeah, in the end it is
choice of
political, of course.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
interesting choice of inspiration. Um, I don't know.
um, yeah, maybe I can finalize with that, with your understanding and awareness of ecology. Um, like when we think of that economic functions of econventions that attracts actually even the actors in the mass production market, and like what do you think about some corporations that following the green trends?
Hmm.
Like, do you have a clear approach to green economy, and if it's possible to have green economy in capitalist world, and how it might reflect in your art practice or in the art world? Do you see there is that kind of trend come, like new
Yeah, yeah.
generation of artists will transform the art market in that way, or do you think is there any relation?
I hope it does become something more about individuals trying to make these changes, because it is insanely hypocritical when it is a big corporation sort of promoting how green they are, and how they're changing so many things when in reality they're not. It is, the more they speak about it, the grosser they are. Like it's better to just admit that you're, I don't know, this monster. Uh, and I think it should be more in the hands of individuals who are sort of directly against it, who are not trying to like cover up or be on the like on their side, but of course hoping that these corporations do change at the same time. Like it's not a I don't know, a never ending like battle. Like I do have this hope that there's a point in which these corporations also change, and it, but real change, you know, not hypocritical anymore, not just through a message, but truly like physical, just industrial change.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope there's more interest in my I mean, I do see it, more interest in my generation to do these changes, even just lifestyle changes, you know, not big projects or anything. But I think, you know, the power of the individual is huge, and it adds up. And I think that's like what we should focus on.
But commenting on that, don't you think like a lot of this things that the companies do to try and greenwash, like for a little bit, and then it moves a lot of the pressure from these kind of like structural changes within the industrial complexes and moving it towards the individual? That is what we're seeing more of, even though like 70% of like the problems that are happening from the corporations and not from individuals.
Of course.
Yeah.
We are not trying to give you hard times.
Oh,
It's
no.
just
No, but I
conversation.
Yeah.
we can, like, we can combat this because, like, the way I see it is like these big industrial companies are the way they are because individuals like consume. Of course, it's
Yeah.
not like the consumer's entire fault because it's
Yeah.
like a million things that, okay, we could get into in another hour, but it still sort of starts from one's own actions as well. Like,
Yeah.
if you cannot stop the big conglomerate of chemical, I don't know, uh, products, it's like at least you can not support them.
Yeah.
And I think that is like there's strength in numbers, and there's like I mean, yeah, I mean, also the effects of like climate change and everything, they're real, they're happening now. Like, it's only that it's not affecting those who are like perpetrating it, you know.
Yeah.
It's affecting those who have nothing to do, like, so sadly, when it reaches them, I think there will be change, because it's not something that is not possible. It's just something that people don't want to do.
There's not the will for doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are not dismantling this kind of struggle. It's just like if the certain political direction plus individual support
No, but
have more sense. But
I also agree, like there has to be both, but there also needs to be the critique of like, okay, if we're doing things in an individual sense, of course, people need to work individual, but that doesn't need to be the core of the message. I understand that people should try to do it by themselves, but it shouldn't be like, oh, people trying to tell people, oh, you should do this, this, and that, instead of that energy being directed towards like corporations, it being directed towards individuals.
Yeah, because a lot of times individuals like you have to be very privileged to be able to do these changes.
Exactly.
You have to be very
There's
privileged
also that
to
element.
be like, oh, I'm not going to buy from Shein. Yeah, you are able to afford something that isn't Shein, but someone might not, and it's not their fault. So it's like it's this complicated thing that you have to do what you can, I think, like what you are capable of, without lecturing, you know, like without demonizing those who participate in it.
Exactly, because like you said, there's different elements. There's like class issues. There's like cultural, economical. You can't just say like, okay, everyone
We'll
should
stop
do this.
tomorrow. Tomorrow, everyone's vegan and no one buys. Like, no. Like, it's not.
Yeah, and exactly. No, I totally agree. Okay.
It was a good point. So it was so nice to chatting with you.
Oh, for
me we don't want to drag it for forever. No, we like to
Yeah.
talk, so
Oh, me too.
no, but it would be nice for maybe also like in the future if you have any other discussion in relation to these topics to have another roundtable with more people also to have like a kind of back and forth as
Um,